One-point perspective is a type of linear perspective. Linear perspective focuses on the use of lines and diagonals to create depth and the illusion of space and form in a flat piece of art. One-point perspective utilizes a single vanishing point, thus the name one point. Linear perspective overall attempts to make objects on a two-dimensional surface appear three-dimensional. This type of perspective was first discovered in Florence, Italy in 1420 during the early Renaissance by Brunelleschi. Although many argue that the Greeks and Romans discovered it first, Brunelleschi still earns the credit. He was a genius, a Renaissance man, an architect, an engineer, and a sculptor. Legend has it, he had gone to Rome and studied buildings, and in order to sketch them accurately, he developed a system of linear perspective. 15 years later, Alberti explained Brunelleschi's system of linear perspective for artists in a book called On Painting in 1435, giving the formula for linear perspective. One-point perspective is broken down to three key elements: a vanishing point, a horizon line, and orthogonals.
The horizon line is usually described as the line that divides the ground from the sky, a meeting point. However, it's not always this way. Depending on where the viewer is positioned, the horizon line usually depicts where the viewer's eyes will travel to based on their vantage point. Artists use it because it creates an illusion of space and realism, but also brings attention to a vanishing point. The vanishing point, also known as the point of convergence, is the spot on the horizon line to which the receding parallel lines diminish. One-point perspective utilizes only one vanishing point as the focus. All the lines of perspective will recede back to this singular point in space. This point can be explained as the place where objects begin to appear, smaller because of depth and distance. This allows artists to create images that have a three-dimensional look to them. Lastly, orthogonals are the vanishing diagonal lines that meet at the vanishing point on a horizon line. All the orthogonal lines meet at the vanishing point, drawing attention to the one point of perspective. In their most basic form, these lines are used to create the look of three-dimensional objects in a two-dimensional medium.
Many Italian artists during the Renaissance began utilizing linear perspective to bring realism and life into their work. The use of linear perspective created more in-depth work and allowed the artists to create points of focus in their art. In addition, it created an overall more technically sound piece of art. The ideal city of Urbino was part of three perspective pieces of Italian Renaissance art: the ideal city of Baltimora, Berlin, and Urbino. The ideal city is one of the most famous pieces of work from the Italian Renaissance, depicting the idealized concept of an ideal city. To this day, no one knows definitively who created the ideal city of Urbino, but is presumed to be either Piero della Francesca, Luciano Lorana, or Francesco di Giorgio Martini, three famous Renaissance men at the time. Within the ideal city of Urbino, we see various buildings along the side of the painting, creating form and structure for the round building in the center. The horizon line within this painting can be found running through the door in the center of the building. It brings the reader's attention to this view. The vanishing point in this piece of one-point perspective art is the door in the center. It's placed within the horizon line and is where the artist intended for the viewer's focus to go. The orthogonal lines cross through this point and the depth of view is the smallest here. Lastly, the orthogonal lines come from the door and run through the tops, middles, and bottoms of the buildings on the side, creating depth and realism within this image, giving that three-dimensional feel the artist was searching for. Overall, this image is a fine example of one-point perspective, utilizing form and giving off the three-dimensional illusion.
The School of Athens by Renaissance artist Raphael is a perfect example of this use of one-point perspective. First, some background. The two central figures are Greek philosophers Aristotle and Plato. While historians suggest that nearly every great Greek philosopher can be found in the painting, artist Raphael did not make any designations outside possible likeness. The horizon line of this image can be found traveling through both Plato and Aristotle. In the center of this painting, as its central vanishing point, are the two undisputed main subjects, Plato on the left and Aristotle, his student, on the right. Both figures hold modern, of the time, bound copies of their book in their left hands, while gesturing with their right. Plato is depicted as old, gray, wise-looking, and barefoot. By contrast, Aristotle, slightly ahead of him, is in mature manhood, healthy, well-dressed, and adorned with gold, and the youth about them seem to look his way. In addition, these two central figures gesture along different dimensions, orthogonals, if you will. Plato vertically, upward along the horizon line, into the massive vault above. Aristotle, on the other hand, points forward, initiating a powerful flow of space and depth towards viewers. Through its use of orthogonals, Raphael offers a sense of grand scale and depth that add so many more layers to an already impressive piece of art.